Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Israel and Hamas have agreed on the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan, including a pause in fighting, the release of 20 hostages and nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, and this has raised the hopes for an end to the two-year conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has thanked US President Donald Trump for his peace efforts and called this a great day for Israel. Meanwhile, Hamas has praised Trump and other regional mediators for their role in ensuring the withdrawal of Israeli forces. World leaders have welcomed the Gaza agreement, with UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer calling it a moment of profound relief. Canada too has expressed its support, and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has praised diplomatic efforts. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters have also welcomed the fresh pact. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that his forces are inflicting heavy losses on Russian troops in Donetsk. He has highlighted successes near Dobropilia while stressing that Ukraine remains on the defensive in other areas, including Kupiansk, under intense Russian attacks for months. US President Donald Trump has ordered 500 National Guard troops to be deployed near Chicago despite opposition from Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker. Trump has warned that he will target Antifa and other domestic groups, promising strong federal action against crime and threats to law enforcement. Former FBI Director James Comey has pleaded not guilty to criminal charges in a case linked to his investigation of Trump's first White House stint in a vindictive prosecution targeting Comey and Trump's political rivals. French President Emmanuel Macron is set to appoint a new Prime Minister within 2 days. Outgoing Premier Sébastien Lecornu has stated that talks with parties have diminished election speculation. A senior UN official has stated that the UN will cut its peacekeeping force by 25%, forcing thousands of troops to evacuate global hotspots. US funding cuts under President Trump's America First policy has prompted this reduction. All right, viewers. Those are the headlines and our top focus. World leaders have welcomed the agreement over the implementation of the first phase of the Gaza plan between Israel and Hamas. Israeli Defense Minister Katz has stated that Israel is awaiting and excited for the hostages to return. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has stated that he welcomes the agreement and would support its full implementation, along with working on recovery and reconstruction in Gaza. He has urged all parties to establish a credible political path. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has appreciated the diplomatic efforts by all parties and has urged for the implementation of the deal without any delay. Additionally, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also welcomed the peace plan. He appreciated the leadership of Prime Minister Netanyahu and expressed hope for the release of hostages and peace in Gaza. To add to this, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called on all parties to swiftly implement all agreed terms and to work towards lasting peace. Argentinian President Javier Milei has also stated that he would sign the candidacy of President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of his contribution towards this peace pact. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters has stated that what we've seen is an essential step towards achieving lasting peace. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has also stated that this development offers hope after months of suffering and devastation. Meanwhile, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi has stated that the agreement is an important step towards de-escalating the situation and achieving the two-state solution. With us on the broadcast is Professor Amin Saikal, Senior Fellow at S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University. He's joining us today from Canberra. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We've now witnessed a landmark moment with the first phase of this peace pact now coming into force. We're likely to see the hostage prisoner exchange take place very, very soon. Donald Trump too has stated that he'll be visiting the Middle East on Sunday, most likely. Do you think what we've just witnessed, this breakthrough we've just seen, paves the path for lasting peace?
It is a major breakthrough, and of course, the first phase of Donald Trump's plan is relatively easy to implement because all sides have agreed for the release of the hostages and possibly in return for a number of Palestinian prisoners being freed from Israeli jails. But I think the problem will arise when they move into the second phase, because that would have to really involve the total withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza and, of course, the disarming of Hamas. I don't think that there has been any agreement on that yet. Something that have to be negotiated, and then, of course, that will be a major sticking point in the process.
Absolutely, as you've mentioned, it's very likely that Hamas, up until now, not saying anything about disarmament could emerge as sticking point. Hamas has, in the meantime, accepted at a future reconstruction efforts could include a technocratic Palestinian leadership. But at the same time, it's also remained mum on this one point in Trump's proposed plan regarding an international board of peace being constituted that would oversee this entire procedure. What do you think will happen in negotiations next when the Trump administration is likely to bring this up?
Well, I think the International Peace Board will have to be established. I mean, President Trump has already said that he would like to chair it. And of course, he's also invited the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, to be on it. But then the question is, who else is going to be on it? Would there be a strong representation of the Palestinians on that board? And would there be also some of the Arab countries represented on that board? Then the question is, who is going to be actually in charge? I mean, this board is supposed to oversee the governance of Gaza, but who's going to be really, in practice, going to be running Gaza? Hamas has said that it will have to be a body of Palestinian technocrats. In other words, the authorities would have to be transferred to that body. And that body will be a legitimate, from Hamas's perspective, will be a legitimate body to run Gaza. But at the same time, the Palestinian Authority, which is in control or at least nominal control of the West Bank, has said that it would like to be in charge of governance of Gaza. But then there have been a lot of objections to the Palestinian Authority because Israel and, of course, some of its allies have argued that that body is not really capable of instituting governance in Gaza, and that body needs to be fully restructured and fully reformed. And how long that is really going to take, there are so many unanswered questions at this point.
Since you've referred to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, I'd like to also ask you, what challenges do you foresee in reconciling these different Palestinian factions within the framework of this peace pact at large down the line?
Well, I mean, at this stage, Hamas is very much weakened. It's not as much of a force as it was before the 7th of October 2023. And Hamas has said that it will sort of give up governance or step aside altogether, but provided that there is a group of technocrats which will be the executive body and running Gaza. I think the expectation is, and the expectation on the part of the negotiators, is that there will be reconciliation between Gaza and the West Bank, or the authorities in the West Bank. And that could place not immediately, but sort of down the line, once the structure of the governance of Gaza is established. But of course, that structure again, will also depend very much on how quickly Gaza is going to be reconstructed or rebuilt, and who's going to really take the necessary or accept the necessary cost of building Gaza. I mean, President Trump has said that the United States is going to be involved, but at the same time, he's not going to entirely fund the reconstruction of Gaza. And he would be really relying very much on some of the Arab countries, particularly oil-rich Arab countries, to come to his aid. Of course, some of the countries like Qatar would be willing to make contributions, but to what extent, for example, some of the other Arab countries will be in a position to do so, I think, again, that's another thing which remains to be seen.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we're shifting our focus away from the Middle East towards what's happening in the United States of America. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that most workers affected by the U.S. government shutdown will get back their pay. This comes as a White House memo earlier signaled that furloughed workers would not be guaranteed back pay after the shutdown. About 750,000 employees are currently foregoing their regular pay as the shutdown nears the end of its first week. Listen in to what Trump had to say.
Well, we're going to see most of them are going to get back pay, and we're going to try and make sure of that. But some of them are being hurt very badly by the Democrats, and they therefore won't qualify.
The U.S. Senate, I beg your pardon, earlier failed to advance funding bills to end the government shutdown for the sixth time. By a vote of 54 to 45, the Senate did not invoke the cloture on the motion to move forward on the House-passed Republican measure. Separately, the procedural vote on the Democratic measure fell short in a 47 to 52 party line vote. Still with us on the broadcast is Professor Amin Saikal. We're seeing a one-upmanship between the Republicans and Democrats in the United States, even as the shutdown is continuing. Federal workers have been furloughed. Trump has now assured that they will receive back pay, but if this issue is not resolved between the Democrats and the Republicans that are continuing their blame game, what is the impact that is likely to affect the U.S. economy very soon?
Well, there's no question that it would really affect the U.S. economy. And obviously, President Trump and the people around him, they are conscious of that. And that's why President Trump now, in a way, has retracted from his original position by saying that most of the people who've been laid off, they're going to be, their jobs are going to be given back to them, and also they're going to get paid for their jobs. I think both sides are very, very cautious in their approach to the current stalemate, because neither side, neither the Republicans nor the Democrats would like to really take the blame for it. And as a result of that, I think one could expect that at some point there has to be some sort of compromise between the two sides. But the question is when that compromise is likely to arise. I mean, at the moment, also President Trump would like to really take advantage of the opportunity in order to get rid of some of the people who are in the federal payroll and replace them by some of Republican loyalists who are basically loyal to President Trump to be employed in those positions. But at the same time, he knows that the midterm election is coming next year. That is the midterm congressional election. And therefore, he cannot be too severe in his approach to the shutdown. And therefore, he will have to really manage the situation in a way which is not really going to harm the chances of the re-election of many Republicans in the midterm elections next year.
So one final question. Secretary Bessent has in fact stated that what we're witnessing at the moment could have long-term consequences, that it could dent the U.S. economy, it could result in people not just receiving their salaries, but also result in reduced spending that would then have a snowball effect. In this context, could we then see the Federal Reserve stepping in and reducing interest rates to mitigate the impact?
Well, I mean, that is absolutely true. And I think that will really affect our overall economic situation in the United States. And also, it could reduce the level of economic activities, which is absolutely necessary in order to ensure that the cost of living does not rise any more than it already has. And of course, some of that is as a result of the tariffs that President Trump has put. But the point is that the current shutdown, if it continues for too long, then it is going to have a serious economic implications for the United States.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus away from the United States towards Europe, particularly the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that his forces are dealing heavy losses to Russian troops in eastern Donetsk. He has highlighted gains in Dobropilya, north of Pokrovsk, a strategic logistics hub targeted by Moscow. Now, Zelensky also spoke with top commander Alexander Syrskyi on the counteroffensive, reporting significant casualties among Russian forces. He has stated that Ukrainian troops are holding other fronts, including Kupiansk, under intense Russian attacks for months. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has claimed that Moscow maintains the initiative across all frontline sectors and has announced a recapture of nearly 5,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory this year. Meanwhile, in southern Kherson region, Russian attacks have killed 3 civilians. Drone strikes have taken place in Sumy, near the northern border, which has also claimed 3 lives. The human cost of the conflict, in fact, continues to increase. Major General Gigi Dwivedi, defense analyst, is joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting statements coming in from both Zelensky and Putin. Now, this all comes in the heels of a report that has highlighted that Patriot missiles that were sent by the United States to Ukraine have failed to intercept a lot of Russian missiles and drones as well. And they've not been performing up to the standard that was expected. We've seen Zelensky put in a request for Tomahawks. The Americans are considering it. Putin has threatened the Americans that it will impact ties between Russia and the United States to a large extent. Where do you see all of this headed to next?
Thank you, Pierre, firstly, for having me on your show. Well, the war in Ukraine is on, and both the sides are trying to make definite gains, but there are different strategies. As far as Ukraine is concerned, it's trying to target the Russian logistic infrastructure very close to the front line so that their operation will be impacted. And the recent reports, you also made a mention that they have tried to target those very important logistic installations which are very close to the front line, because that definitely impedes the pace of operation. On the other side, what Russia is doing, Russia is targeting the infrastructure, particularly energy infrastructure. Like they actually targeted the power plant only 2 days back, primarily to ensure that the power grid of Ukraine is disrupted. And this will have effect both on the morale of the civilians and also the defense manufacturing that is going on. Now, coming to the question of Patriot missiles not very effective against the Russians' missiles and aircrafts, well, that's true, because Patriot is basically surface to air missile. It has a limited range of about 650 to 800 kilometers, and also its ability to target, is to some extent not comparable to Tomahawk, because Tomahawk is a intermediate range missile which has a range of about 2,500 kilometers. Means if it is given to the Ukrainians, then they will be able to target installations or objectives quite deep into Russia. And in fact, President President of America had also asked the Ukrainians as to what exactly they will be doing with the missiles. I mean, how they plan to use the missiles, because definitely in case Ukrainian target deep inside Russia, there'll be definite escalation. And that's what President Putin also has pointed out. So the point at issue is the war is on. Both sides are trying to make definite gains. Strategy is different, and Ukraine capability to take on the Russian offensive or Russian fighting is only dependent upon how much support they get from America and Europe, and especially President Trump, because he is yet not decided whether the Tomahawk missiles will be given to Ukraine. But in case that is given, that will definitely, kind of put the balance in the Ukrainian favor, and that will also add a different dimension to the ongoing war, because Ukraine will have capability to hit deep inside Russia, and that means next level of escalation. Yeah.
Indeed, sir, you referred to Europe. We do see, as we've discussed earlier, that NATO's response, especially on the ground, has been very calibrated. But we've also seen France recently target a Russian tanker, Russian ship, which it claims is part of Russia's shadow fleet. So then can we expect other countries in Europe to follow suit, and in fact the targeting against Russia to then shift to the Baltic?
That's right, because currently the response of European nations is very calibrated, I would say very cautious. And that's what President Zelensky also has said, that while Russia is having ball, or Russia is having its free passage as far as the war is concerned, but the kind of support that he expects from European nation is not forthcoming. Now, the question is whether this engagement or the hostilities will, further expand to Baltic or even to the Black Sea. That is going to be another dimension, because once you start to target the shipping, once you start to target the, opponents' shipping lanes, well, that will actually means a different level of escalation. But I don't think that that will be a new normal. Yes, there can be an odd exception like what the French have done, but it will not become a new normal, because that will definitely means escalation of the conflict. But the point at issue today is whether Europe is going to double down on the support to Zelensky, because kind of support that is being rendered today is more rhetoric than actually substantial. So I think that Europe will have to take a call, because otherwise the Ukrainian capability to take on the sustained attrition warfare has limitation, because Russia has the stamina, but that stamina Ukraine doesn't have, because it has very limited capability. So we'll have to see, wait and watch as to how Europe now further steps in, what kind of support it will go. But the two things are very important. Firstly, Ukrainians require weapon systems, they require missiles, they require artillery, they require rockets, and also they require perhaps Tomahawk missiles, because that will mean a deterrence to Russia, and that will restrain Russian capability to carry out, I would say, unlimited attacks or aerial attacks against Ukraine, because Tomahawk missile is a very potent missile, and it will actually give a very different capability to Ukraine. Pierre.
All right, sir, requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other crucial developments. Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Tajikistan to attend the Russia Central Asia Summit, meeting leaders of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan to discuss regional development and Moscow's relations. He will also join Armenia, Azerbaijan and Belarus in a broader Commonwealth of Independent States meeting. Now, Putin aims to strengthen ties with Central Asian states, address border disputes and boost stability in the region. Meanwhile, Russia's Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has held military talks with the Tajik counterpart Emomali Sobirzoda. Discussions at the Russia Central Asia Summit will also focus on migrant workers and remittances. Putin is expected to also meet Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev amid strained bilateral relations as he seeks to reinforce Russia's influence in Central Asia and the Caucasus region. More news coming in. Afghanistan's foreign ministry has stated that Taliban foreign minister Amir Khan Muttaqi has left for India. It would be the first visit to India by a Taliban leader since the group seized power in 2021. The trip highlights Taliban's efforts to expand engagement with regional powers in a quest for economic ties and eventual diplomatic recognition. Now, so far, Russia is the only country to have formally recognized the Taliban administration. The Afghan Foreign Ministry has stated that Muttaqi will hold talks with the Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar and other officials on political, economic and trade issues. Now, historically, India and Afghanistan have enjoyed friendly relations, but India had shut its embassy in Kabul after the 2021 US withdrawal from the war-shattered country and the return of Taliban to power. India has opened a small mission a year later in order to facilitate trade, medical support and humanitarian aid. With us on the broadcast is Major General G.G. Dwivedi. Sir, major visit by the Taliban Afghan foreign minister to India. While India does not diplomatically recognize the Taliban regime, we have been providing humanitarian aid to the people of Afghanistan, especially as we've seen in the recent earthquake as well. What do you expect of that will take place in this crucial meeting? What are the geopolitical implications of this visit too?
Well, Pia, first and foremost, this visit is very significant because while we have not recognized the Taliban II regime, but at the same time, we have been having engagements and extending all the humanitarian support, humanitarian aid. And India has invested a lot in the infrastructure development of Afghanistan and also its energy sector. So the point is this visit comes at a very important time because the FPAC or this region, your diplomatic dynamics are undergoing tremendous change. In fact, only 2 days back there was a summit in Russia, that is the Moscow format, which has 10 nations coming together, where India is one of them, that the American efforts to have a base at Bagram, they have opposed. They said that there's no foreign infrastructure, military infrastructure should be in Afghanistan. Now, coming to the visit as such, while there may not be any big ticket announcement, but definitely there will be progress on the cultural issues, on the economic issues, and also on the humanitarian issues, because the point is that India has deep interest, strategic interest in Afghanistan, especially because the kind of relations that Afghanistan-Pakistan had. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, they thought that Taliban 2.0 will be actually under their control, but that has not worked out. And today the relations between Taliban and Pakistan are highly strained because of one is the territorial dispute of Durand Line, and secondly, against Pashtun also there is a hostile sentiment in Pakistan. So therefore, I think this visit comes at a very important time, which gives India an opportunity to take our relationship forward and also to ensure that our strategic interests, our security interests are well served. And I'm sure that this visit will definitely be a step forward and also reassure the people of Afghanistan, because we always stood by them, that even if our diplomatic relations are not very formalized, but yet we are with the people and we are extending all the support which they need at this time, Pia.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus towards further developments. We're now learning that Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, has stated that the latest vessel in the Caribbean bombed by the United States may have been a Colombian vessel with Colombian citizens on board. The White House has called these claims baseless. US President Donald Trump announced that the latest series of military strikes targeting drug trafficking vessels off the coast of Venezuela has now come through. The Pentagon has yet to confirm any such strike. Petro has stated that indications show that the last boat bombed was Colombian with Colombian citizens inside, and has called the action aggression against all of Latin America and the Caribbean. All right, viewers, with that, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.